not important.
Django.
And if I bothered you, will you accept my apology?
Welcome into Movie Talk. I'm Eric Stafford. This is not Fred Kirby, but Keegan Matheson.
Howdy, folks.
He's got the fringe. He's shaking the fringe today.
I mean, I got to.
And I thought about bringing a cowboy hat, but I have no cowboy hat.
I don't have a cowboy hat either.
I really need to get a cowboy hat. So that's what I found from this. But anyway, today on Movie Talk, we decided, and we were talking about this last week, you know, we did the little thing previewing the summer movies and all. And we started talking about, we're kind of on a personal kick. I'm kind of into Westerns right now. And so we were talking about that. And we were like, we need to do a Western show, man. We need to do a Western show. So here we are doing our Western show. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be kind of different because what usually happens with these and what I've kind of found out is over time, me and Keegan will start talking about something and we'll say, oh, that's on my list. That's on my list. So in order to spare you that, what we're going to do is I have made a gargantuan list of 22 movies that I like. And if he mentions one of them, I'm marking it out. And I'm going to mention something else. Just to give you a full, wider range of film.
Right.
So, but these are the Westerns that mattered to me growing up. He was laughing at me because yesterday or the day before I was going through and I was looking at
1950s.
I went year by year. Like I think I started in 35. So, you know,
35.
Because, well, Stagecoach come out in 39.
Oh, okay.
And so that was a John Ford film. And it was 1939, whether you know it or not, and you know it, right, is like considered the year in Hollywood, the perfect year in Hollywood, because Gone with the Wind came out, Wizard of Oz, and Stagecoach. So
had something for everybody.
It had like three perfect films, which a lot of people consider those perfect films for their genres. Like you got the Wizard of Oz for the fantasy, and then you got the Gone with the Wind for the somewhat historical but romancy kind of thing. And
Can't
then
do the Flying Monkeys.
Yeah, Flying Monkeys is great.
That's too much.
What scared me more, I was scared of the Flying Monkeys. This totally has nothing to do with Westerns. I was scared of the Flying Monkeys, but I was more scared of the apple trees that threw the apples at them, because we had apple trees. We didn't have no flying monkeys. The apple trees come to life kind of scared me.
Okay.
So, anyway, we digress. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk Western movies, and I'm going to let Keegan have first go because I want to hear.
You want to do the whole list?
Well, I might. Well, we can alternate.
Okay.
We can alternate.
It don't matter.
But anyway, I just wanted to be able to give you a more wider range of film. So because there's a lot of movies matter to me, not just these.
I would say I leaned more modern. I mean,
okay.
I probably have about 5 and 5. 5 old and 5 new.
There's some of the modern ones I haven't seen, or there's some of them that people consider classics that I've seen once. Mm-hmm. And I was like even kind of sketch going back and going through the years. I was kind of sketching. I was like, I can't really talk about that because I barely remember it.
Right.
You know, I remember it, but I barely remember it. So I hate to say, you know. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, these are the Westerns that matter to me. And I know that might sound kind of crazy, but sometimes, you know, you do these movie lists, and it's like, this is the movie list, and you kind of feel like a little responsibility to say, this is a classic, this is here, and this is it. No, these are, honest to God, the movies that touched me and made me, I mean, there's a couple of them in here you're never going to have heard of. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, that's my thought.
All right. Well,
so, as I was growing up. But I'll let you have first shot. You go right out of the pitch.
I got an honorable mention, and I'll mention it with my 10th because it's the same movie. It's just a remake.
Okay.
So honorable mention is the original. I think it came out in 58. Maybe that's a little too early. But it was True Grit.
No, it was in the 60s.
In the 60s. Yeah, because John Wayne's a little older in that movie. He's a little bit more, you know.
Yeah, I think it was like 68 or 69, something like that.
And the actual one that made my list was True Grit's Joel and Ethan Coen's remake with Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges and Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, yeah. I think I think it just has to do with how annoying the original lady is that plays the little girl. Because the whole purpose of the movie is that this very strong, independent lady, she ends up, her father gets killed, and she wants to get revenge. So she hires the most qualified person she thinks she found, and that's Rooster Cockburn, I believe is his name.
Rooster Cockburn.
Horrible name, but that's his name. And it's played by Jeff Bridges or John Wayne, depending on which one you watch. But, I mean, they're interchangeable. And they go find this guy. And he teams up with a U.S. Marshal, played by Matt Damon. And I can't remember who plays in the original.
Glenn Campbell.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, duh. Glenn Campbell. Rhinestone Cowboy and everything.
Rhinestone Cowboy, yeah.
But, yeah.
Says Life magazine, True Grit is good enough for me. It's good enough for you. And if it isn't good enough for some movie company, then the free enterprise system is really going to hell.
Move along. Come on.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
Well, what do you want? Speak up.
I've already wrinkled the paper. It's pretty loose because your makings are too dry. I'm looking for Tom Cheney.
Well, who's he?
He's the man that shot and killed my father, Frank Ross.
Says the New York Times, as touching as it is irreverently amusing.
Marshal Rooster Cogburn and I are going after the murderer, Tom Cheney.
How did you light on that greasy vagabond?
They say he has grit.
He's a notorious thumper. He's not a man I would care to share a bed with.
Nor would I.
And now, Paramount Pictures presents the Hal Wallace production, True Grit. Starring John Wayne as Rooster Cogburn, the most colorful character he's ever played.
If I smelled as bad as you, I wouldn't live near people.
Kim Darby as Mattie Ross.
My God. She reminds me of me.
Glenn Campbell in his first big screen role.
A little earlier, I gave some thought to stealing a kiss from you, although you are very young. And you're unattractive to boot. But now I'm of a mind to give you 5 or 6 good licks with my belt.
Well, one would be as unpleasant as the other.
True Grit, a slip of a girl, a pot-bellied, one-eyed Western Marshal, and a Texas Ranger wearing breeches a size too big.
What are you doing? Looking for sign.
You couldn't see it if you saw it.
They're trailing the most surprised killer the West ever knew.
I'm here to take you back to Fort Smith and hang you.
And I think I will not go. Now, how do you like that?
Now, you mean to say that you won't go with me on your own free will?
You just got it the other way around. Now, you will follow me. I didn't think you'd do it.
Says Saturday Review, True Grit is lively, uproarious, high adventure.
I mean to kill you in 1 minute, Ned. Or see you hanged in Fort Smith at Judge Parker's convenience. Which'll it be?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
No grit, Rooster Cogburn, not much.
Mr. Cogburn, in your 4 years as U.S. Marshal, how many men have you shot?
Shot or killed?
Let us restrict it to killed so that we may have a manageable figure.
Mr. Cogburn,
What do you want, girl?
I'm looking for the man who killed my father. The man's name is Tom Cheney, and I need somebody to go after him.
What's your name?
My name is Mattie Ross. Are you some kind of law?
I'm a Texas Ranger.
I know Cheney. It is at least a two-man job taking him alive.
Marshal Coburn? Can we depart this afternoon?
We?
I'm going with you.
Congratulations, you graduated from marauder to wet nurse.
He's being followed.
What do we do, Marshal?
You missed your shot, Cogburn.
Just let this go.
I thought you were going to say the sun was in your eyes. That is to say, your eye.
You got a lot of experience with bounty hunters, do you?
That is a silly question. I am 14.
You can run on for a long time.
Time for you to go home.
I don't like you. I will not go back, not without Cheney, dead or alive.
Early, we gotta cut you down.
Cheney's here! Help me, Marshal!
Now what, Cogburn?
Them boys don't think about the wrath that's about to set down on him. Cheney and his gang are rough lot. I do not regret shooting your father.
I will kill this girl!
Biggest mistake you ever made.
Tell him that God's gonna cut you down.
Help me!
I can do nothing for you, son.
It's a pretty good film. What do you think of True Grit?
Well, when I saw the original, I saw it pretty close to when it come out. I don't know if I saw it like second run or what, but I do remember seeing it on TV as a kid. And I always loved the movie. I thought it was a great film, and I figured you would pick the new one.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the Coen brothers did it.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I do remember when the newer one, when the remake came out, that they had that they were credited for it being closer to the book because it's actually based on a book and how much closer it was to the book. And I remember
So it's a
enjoying
remake of a remake of a remake.
Sort of. but I do remember it being and the book actually going back on the bestsellers list when that Coen Brothers film come out. So, but it's a great film. Both of them are great films, and I enjoy them both. I didn't mind the girl in the first one.
Yeah,
I kind of liked her.
Well, after a while, it just grates.
Yeah, but it was a different time.
Yeah.
It was a different acting time too.
Exactly.
And some movies, even it always goes back to Star Wars. But you talk about some of these things, and you go back and look at the original Star Wars, and the pacing is horrible.
You just walk outside and you see the sun, and you're like, they had a sun in Star Wars.
Yeah, they had sun in Star Wars. There's lots of Star Wars. Well, we actually, somebody had listed Star Wars as a Western when we were looking at some of the best of list, and we're like, nah.
Whatever.
Nah. It's got Western elements, but...
At number 9, I have Django Unchained.
Django Unchained.
Yes.
The new I consider that kind of a modern classic.
Yeah,
that's a
new
classic.
one.
And it's
Directed
one
by
of my
Quentin
favorites.
Tarantino, of course, starring Jamie Foxx. I don't really know what else you could say except the meme with Leonardo DiCaprio and just all that.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's got a lot of good people in it. Don
Yeah.
Johnson, Samuel L. Jackson. It's got a great cast in it. Actually, the original Django shows up in it, and I can't remember the actor's name. The guy that played Django
in like 69 or something.
Yeah, in the original Django. And when I'm struggling for words here, but when the spaghetti westerns come about and the Italian westerns come about, and Django was so popular, then they started every movie that came out, they called it Django something.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter if it was Franco Nero, his actor's name. See, I remember that after I went through it. But Franco Nero, who played the original Django, and then he did some spaghetti westerns afterwards, but not a lot. And so he kind of didn't want to get typecast into that. So they would do all these new movies, and it would always be Django gets defeated, Django finds a love, Django whatever. So they basically just started calling them all Django. It didn't matter who it was. So.
But I think Christoph Waltz had a great role in that film.
Oh yeah, and his dialogue alone is like, I mean, he has some long speeches.
Yeah.
And I recently saw it when we were in Talladega. I saw it in the hotel. They had it going on in the hotel, and I saw it and watched it again. And I hadn't seen it in a while. And it was a great movie.
Quentin Tarantino, man, he's a weird man, but he can make good movies.
I do love it when Jamie Foxx buys the blue suit.
Yeah.
And so he buys the blue suit, and then the girl's like, "Yeah, he can pick anything you wanted to wear, and you pick that."
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny. I thought that was a great joke.
Looks like a debutante or something.
Well, he looks like Little Boy Blue or something out of a painting, you know.
On to 8, I picked Hell or High Water, which is sort of
I haven't seen that yet.
It's sort of a Western. It's set in West Texas, and it's about a couple of brothers that rob banks, and and Jeff Bridges, the cop, has to hunt him down.
Jeff Bridges again.
Yeah, of course, it's Jeff Bridges again. I will say that he plays it up in True Grit, like the country accent, a little bit more than in this film.
Yeah, he's a little more frontiersman, I guess you would say.
Yeah, that's probably good. You probably know he also has a co-star, and he's in Yellowstone and all that. I forget his name, but I think Ben Foster steals this movie, and honestly, I think Ben Foster is probably the greatest modern Western actor.
Really?
I just think he kills it in every role that he does.
Well, he's a great actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's. We were talking about him before, and I liked him in the new version of The Mechanic with Jason Statham. So.
Yeah. Chris Pine's in this movie, and I think anybody can really like this. It's a CBS film, so they don't have a lot of. It's R, but it's it doesn't have a lot of stuff that you would be questionable about. But I think that. So what it is basically these two brothers are trying to buy the ranch that their mother left for them, but they have to pay money, and there's oil on the land. So it's just the ranch and nothing else around them.
Okay.
And so they have to pay off the loan, and they do that by robbing banks and give me all the 10s and 20s in your cash register, that kind of deal. Anyway, but Hell or High Water, pretty much a modern classic, I think.
Oh, okay, cool.
Moving on, I picked the No Country for Old Men, which is also a Joel and Ethan Coen movie, and terrifying performance.
And he's basically supposed to be Satan. Somebody said he's supposed to be the devil through the whole thing.
Javier Bardem is the actor, and Josh Brolin's in that, and as the leading man, as Llewellyn, which is an interesting name for a character, Llewellyn. But I just love the way that his significant other says his name in that movie, Llewellyn. It's just every time she says it cracks me up because she is just so overacting, but it works. It works in the role.
But Javier, didn't he win the Oscar for that? I think he won Best Oscar.
Yes,
Best actor.
Best actor in that. Yeah. Parents hated it. I played it for them, and they were like, "What the heck are we watching?" Because in the beginning of the movie, he's asking somebody to call a coin toss, and then he kills the dude right there with a. I think it's what you put a bolt in a lamb.
It's like a slaughter animals.
Dad was not having that. He was like, "What are we watching?" But, he had other expletives too, but I won't say this. But I picked and then pretty much all the classic up top. The Good and Bad and the Ugly. I put it 5.
Oh, okay.
I know that's kind of low, but I put it at 5. And I don't really know what else you can say about that movie. I think we've probably exhausted about that.
I think next to Star Wars, I own more physical copies of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly than any other film.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of sad, but it's what has happened is it would be in sets with other Westerns or things like that. Right. So I actually own at least 4 or 5 physical copies of that movie, and I still haven't bought the 4K. So when I buy the 4K, it'll be yet another physical copy of The
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
It's long. It kind of drones on a little bit. There's times you look at your watch, definitely. But I don't think
when they get to the Civil War part,
that
I'm like, okay. Yeah. It took me a little bit to get through the Civil War part.
But just an iconic role for Clint Eastwood, and I think it's when people think of westerns, they think of either Clint Eastwood or John Wayne.
Yeah, and when you talk about the Sergio Leone movies, the Man with No Name trilogy, you started with Fistful of Dollars.
Yep.
And so that was Clint Eastwood. That was one part of it. Then in the second movie, for a few dollars more, they brought in Lee Van Cleef. And then by the time they do the third movie, they have Eli Wallach. So it's almost like the Good and the Bad and the Ugly is the perfection of that trilogy. It is everything from all 3 of those movies and then in itself. Yeah. So it is the it's kind of like with the James Bond films. You had Dr. No, and then you had From Russia with Love, and then they had Goldfinger. And Goldfinger is like classic Coke. Mm-hmm. It is like the movie that people go to, but that's the first time they got it all together, and that's the way Good and the Bad and the Ugly is. They had elements of all three, but that final movie is just its own thing.
The Ecstasy of Gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just hearing that.
That's iconic.
Well, and now they play it with what, Modelo beer commercials?
They play it with Modelo beer commercials.
Yeah, you hear the beer.
Metallica comes on stage to that song.
Yeah,
so,
and I think it was even in a Jackass movie, so, so you heard it in that as well. But
nothing happens until it gets made into a Jackass movie. Right?
But that's, Ennio Morricone is the guy that did the music for those, and that original score, everybody knows it. If you hear, you hear elements of the human voice, then you also hear like guitars,
yes,
maybe trumpets. They have like drums that try to sound like machine guns and things like that. So that was an innovation at the time in the 60s to use all those different elements in the soundtrack. But anybody knows it as soon as they hear that, they know. Yeah, they know.
The Man with No Name with his cape, and he like floats over.
Which I'm trying to think of which studio that was that did those.
And just the most chewed up cigar you've ever seen in your life.
But the thing of it is he never smokes a cigar.
Yeah.
You hardly ever see it
all
lit because he didn't like to smoke. So he didn't want to smoke. So he had different sized cigars throughout the whole thing. But I forget what movie studio it was that actually put them out in America, but they called it the Man with No Name trilogy, but he actually has a name in each one of them. It's like Blondie, and he has a name in every one of them.
So the next one I picked was The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Yeah.
I recently watched that one. This is actually what I watched for this particular show. It's the only one I watched for this particular show. And I was sold on it. I mean, because really you only need James Stewart and John Wayne in a movie together, and you probably got to have a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
But it's told kind of backwards to forwards a little bit. You kind of get to know the characters, and basically you see the aftermath of something that's happened, and then we go into like a flashback, and we go through James Stewart's, kind of becoming a man or a gunslinger, or he thought he was, and. Yeah, and then at the end of the movie, it's a big twist and all that good stuff. It's got everything you want in a Western. It's got a little bit of politics, so you check your watch a little bit, but it's a pretty classic Western movie.
Of the frontier, the Old West lives again as only John Ford can recreate it. Peopled with wonderful characters who have become legend in their own time. Of them all, two are the most memorable: Liberty Valance and the man who shot him.
That's my steak, Valance. But you heard him, dude. Pick it up. I said you, Liberty. You pick it up.
And the man who shot him was justifiably destined to become a hero. Yet, strangely enough, only one of these people could be sure he knew the identity of the man who shot Liberty Valance.
Now you stay out of this, Donovan. He's been hiding behind your gun long enough. You got a choice, dishwasher. Either you get out of town, or tonight you'll be out in that street alone.
Say he had a gun in his hand, didn't you?
I didn't say that.
That ain't murder, Mr. Marshall. That's a clean-cut case of self-defense.
Now get out of my way. this time right between the eyes.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you see because it just came out on 4K. Did
Yep.
you see the new 4K? Is that the one you got?
It was on
or-
Paramount Plus.
Oh, okay. So it probably is.
It's a 4K
scanned
transfer.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a 4K transfer.
It's a 4K
so
transfer.
So you saw the 4K. But, and that's something else, folks. If you are thinking about buying a 4K and you're thinking about getting the 4K movies, a lot of times when they're re-released and you go watch them on Amazon, you watch them on anything, it's already the new 4K transfer. I think I had a digital code for the original Psycho, and I think the one you watch now is the new transfer with the extra time in it. So you really didn't have to buy it, but if you wanted to, I guess you could. But and a lot of people don't think about James Stewart being a Western star, but he was in a lot of Westerns. He was a big star in a lot of Westerns. He did quite a few.
All right, so then I have 310 to Yuma, which is the remake.
The remake.
The remake.
The Christian Bale 310 to
Yes. You know how much I love Christian Bale. It's a weak spot of mine, but Christian Bale, Russell Crowe, who plays an excellent role in this film. I think that's probably his best performance, honestly. Either that or Nice Guys, but I'm a little biased with Nice Guys because it's just so funny. Are you a Gladiator person?
Yeah, I do like Gladiator.
Okay, so you would probably say that's Russell Crowe's.
I don't know. I mean, this is a good part for him, and it was a good. And when I saw this film, I was just so happy, and it kind of had the pedigree because at the beginning of it, you see Peter Fonda, and I was so happy that Peter Fonda was in this movie when I saw it at the theater.
A classic Western.
Is a classic Western guy that knows the Westerns, and I was like, give it a little street cred. And now, who's the guy from that's Russell Crowe's bestie? His number
Ben
one.
Foster.
Ben Foster, the guy you were talking about earlier in No Country for Old Men. Not No Country for Old Men. The
Hell or High Water.
Hell or High Water. And so he's he's great. In that film.
And he's got the most, I don't know, bad tail jacket ever. He's got a white jacket and it's double breasted. I gotta hunt that down. Pretty nice. And he's got the double gun, so he's doing this. It's pretty badass, I will say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but a good cast in that film. It's a very enjoyable film.
Yeah. Then I picked The Unforgiven. Have you seen The Unforgiven?
Yeah. I have not seen The Unforgiven, and I know that it won the Oscars when I was in high school or something.
But I love the soundtrack.
Still haven't seen it.
The acoustic soundtrack that they have. It's just like this 3-minute little instrumental acoustic guitar, and it's just so beautiful. I don't know. It's wonderful. And Clint Eastwood basically plays a washed-up country frontiersman, I guess.
Yeah.
And he has to go about his business again because it gets personal this time, and he attacks somebody in his family.
It always gets personal.
It always gets so personal. But Morgan Freeman's in it, and Gene Hackman's in it.
Gene Hackman, another great Western star.
Yeah, that gave it some cred too because he'd been there, done that.
Well, you got Clint Eastwood in a Western.
Clint Eastwood,
that's pretty much the cred.
That's the cred, all the cred you need, exactly. And I would have to say that I think Clint Eastwood's best role is probably my number one movie, which is Fistful of Dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But before we get to Fistful of Dollars, I have Bone Tomahawk, which is relatively...
Now, you let me borrow it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, Bone Tomahawk is pretty cool. It's got Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson. It's basically Patrick Wilson's wife gets kidnapped, and they think it's like this kind of cult thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kurt Russell and Patrick Wilson, they all go and try to find this weird array of people. And it certainly is the most unique thing I've ever seen in a film, this kind of cult people. And they figure out what's at the end of the rainbow, and it's not very pretty. And they try to escape with her, and it extracts a toll. So, there you go.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, that's the whole plot of it.
That's the whole thing.
Situation serious.
Mrs. O'Dwyer was abducted.
She is my everything, and those savages have got her. God knows what they're doing to her. Every second that we delay.
We're making a 5-day journey in 3 days, riding along and sleeping the bare minimum.
I don't know what's west of here. No cattle trail or anything else goes in that direction.
If our horses die before we get there, we go into hostile territory, weak and foggy with exhaustion, we won't rescue anybody.
He's gonna penetrate.
Don't be scared. I am a friend.
You aren't. If you want to question my morals, do it later.
And you get to see the most brutal scene I've ever seen in a movie. Wow. Jeez. Anyway, and number one was Fistful of Dollars for me.
Oh, wow. Fistful of Dollars.
Which I think is just short enough that you're like, yes, that was a Western. I didn't have to check my clock at all. I got what I wanted. The dude gets the girl at the end, sort of, not really. And you're just happy at the end of it.
But you have two warring factions in the town.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the town is basically washed up and gone. And then, of course, Clint Eastwood shows up, and then he kind of goes back and forth between the two sides of the warring factions in town and ends up with a fistful of dollars.
Fitting.
Fitting that.
What do you think of my list?
I love it. I love everything
Fantastic.
on there. There's
There we go.
not any, I mean, the ones that I haven't seen I want to see. So it is that kind of way. I have some non-traditionals on here. I have some weird ones. I'm trying to think of any of the strange ones that I may have on here that we had the same things, but I'm not really seeing anything. I think a lot of mine are weird in their own. We do have the good and the bad and the ugly. We've talked about that, so I'm marking that out.
Okay.
So we have talked about that.
Hey, we only
so that's
have
the
one.
only one. Now some of these I thought, because we thought we might have Paige sit in on this, but she was a little chicken, so she didn't get So she said she didn't really know. So she knows Westerns. That's not the point, but she was a little busy, and then at the same time she was like, you know, but so there were some on this list that I thought she would surely pick if she was in here, because I thought I was going against two people. So out of 22, I only had to mark out one. So
that's pretty crazy.
I got 21 movies on here, no particular order, and I'll try to go through them as fast as possible because that's just the way I am. But and some of these are not like what you would call dyed-in-the-wool classics. These are ones that mattered to me. These are Westerns that mattered to me in my lifetime, and the ones I thought were really good. And the first one is going to be just total mess with you right off the bat, and that's Westworld.
MGM presents Westworld.
Your attention, please. We will soon be landing at Westworld, the ultimate resort.
We have you on grid 5, over.
It consists of 3 worlds of the past.
Locking in now.
Worlds where you can live out your every fantasy. There's Roman world, the lusty, decadent delights of imperial Pompeii.
Notify ground crews.
Medieval world, chivalry and combat in 13th century Europe. And Westworld, lawless violence on the American frontier of the 1880s.
Bacon, cinnamon toast.
Each resort is maintained by reliable computer technology and peopled by lifelike robot men and women.
Let's stand by for resort activation. Ready on 6, on 5, on 4, on 3, on 2. Activate now.
Our robots are programmed to provide you with an unforgettable vacation.
Dinner at 7, breakfast at 6:30. Get lunch on your own. Don't look like much here, but we have everything.
Mean to tell me he's a robot?
What'll it be?
Vodka martini on the rocks with a twist of lemon. Very dry, please.
Just give him whiskey. He's new in town.
Many elements of the Delos Resort are potentially dangerous. That's part of the appeal.
Go on.
You say something, boy.
Kill him.
Your move.
Our technology is designed to provide all this in complete safety. In Westworld, frustrations find release. Desire ends in satisfaction.
Let me handle it.
And all in a controlled environment.
That's not supposed to happen.
We know you'll enjoy your stay in Westworld.
Hold it.
The ultimate resort.
Let me do it this time.
Where nothing can possibly go wrong.
I'm shot.
Go wrong.
Raw.
Go wrong.
Oh my God.
Shut down. Shut down immediately.
Westworld from MGM, starring Yul Brynner, Richard Benjamin, and James Brolin. Westworld, the ultimate resort. Boy, do we have a vacation for you, for you, for you, for you.
You came back.
You know, if I could stay right here with you, I would.
Just sometimes I feel like the world out there is calling me.
You're one of them, aren't you? You're not real.
Bring yourself back online.
Do you know where you are?
I'm in a dream.
You're in my dream. I designed every part of this place. It's not a theme park, but an entire world.
You and everyone you know were built to gratify the desires of the people who pay to visit your world.
Just don't forget, they're not real. What you and I do is so complicated.
I need your help, Dolores. I think I made a mistake.
So our creatures have been misbehaving.
I think there may be something wrong with this world.
No choice you ever made was your own. You have always been a prisoner. What if I told you I'm here to set you free?
Are we very old friends?
No, I wouldn't say friends, Dolores. I wouldn't say that at all.
From 1973.
Okay. I've heard of the TV show, but
You've heard of the TV show. This was
Right.
the original movie. Michael Crichton wrote it, the guy that wrote Jurassic Park, and it's about a theme park, of course.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing as Jurassic Park, but that was this is robots. So they have the robots in Westworld, and you go and you pay money to go and be a Wild West hero, be your own Wild West hero. So you go in there and you have gunfights and you meet the dance hall girls and you
Right.
rob banks and you have all that, and you pay an exorbitant amount of money to be able to do that with the robots and do whatever you want to them because they're just robots, they're not real people. Well,
Right.
you know, then suddenly, as things often do in these movies, the robots go haywire and they start killing the guest.
Oh.
So you have the robots coming out. And what actually happens in the film is they have...
Directed by Elon Musk.
Maybe. I'm sure Elon saw it. But anyway, one in particular robot is Yul Brynner, and he is in full black cowboy outfit, which he wore in the film The Magnificent Seven. He also wore it in the Sabata movies. He played Sabata, which was an Italian spaghetti western. And so he's known for being in this outfit. Well, now it's Yul Brynner as a robot, and he's chasing two normal guys, and he's like the Terminator. He's a robot. He ain't stopping, and he chases them all throughout the park. And there's different worlds. There's Westworld. There's like a Knight's world, and like a kind of that kind of world. But he chases them all through the park. The behind the scenes. They throw acid in his face. They try to kill him, but he's the Terminator. He's the Terminator before the Terminator, and he follows them entirely. And it is just ruthless. It is a ruthless movie, but it's just really fun. But the tagline for the movie was, "What could possibly go wrong? Go wrong." Go wrong, because the robot, messes up. But it's definitely 70s sci-fi, but it's all out west. And that's one thing we didn't really talk about with the westerns is that westerns are cheap to make because all you got is the horse.
You got the saloon.
You got the saloon or whatever, and a lot of the studios had their own ranches because they're out west, so they had built their own sets. Right. So there's lots of, you'll see the towns, and you're like, I've seen that town 1,000,000 times.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, because
you have.
Because you have, and it's just in a different movie. But Westworld is definitely one of my favorites, and to see the Western kind of flipped on its side a little bit, it's really good. It's really good. Now, the new Westworld that HBO did, the first season's really good, and it's more cowboy, but then the rest of them aren't so much. But it's really, both of those
I don't
are
think
really
people
good.
are really aware that it was a movie before the TV show ever existed.
Yeah, it's because it's an old movie. 1973. I was 6 years old when that came out. Anyway, that was the first movie, and I went way too far into that. The next one up is a movie that was kind of a spoof of the spaghetti westerns, and it was actually a spaghetti western itself, and it's They Call Me Trinity. And it was Terrence Hill starred in that with Bud Spencer. And Terrence Hill is a real good-looking guy, and blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And then Bud Spencer is this big bear of a guy that's like, he's just big and hairy. He's a big, hairy dude. And so they kind of played partners as far as robbing and stuff like that. But it was known for the slapstick in it. Like Terrence Hill would slap the guy, and then he would grab the guy's gun, and he'd put the gun in his face. He'd slap him again. He'd put the gun back in his holster, and it was very comical and very funny. And when I first saw that, I just couldn't believe how funny it was. But it wasn't quite up to Blazing Saddles, which we haven't. We kind of left it off the list. It's so politically incorrect. The next movie up for me is Hondo, which is it's got the pedigree, man. I mean, I'm sorry. You got it was written by Louis L'Amour, who writes so many Western books, and then it starred John Wayne, and then on top of that, it was the only, as far as I know, or one of the only 3D Westerns, and it was the first 3D Western, and it came out in 1953. The reason I remember it and remember it fondly is because in the 80s, local TV markets got to show it in 3D, and you would go to the 7-Eleven, WSOC in Charlotte was showing it, and you could go to the 7-Eleven in Charlotte and get your Hondo 3D glasses. So when it was coming on, you could watch Hondo in 3D. And I still have I should have brought them.
Is it red and blue?
Yeah, it's the red and blue. Red and blue 3D. Straight off the tube television there, and you could watch Hondo in 3D. Now, when the Blu-ray come out, I kind of was hoping that it would have both versions of the film, but no, it only has the regular version. It does not have
the 3D.
The 3D.
Oh, that's disappointing.
But what happens in the story is Hondo is this, ranch rider guy. He comes across a woman and her son, and her husband has died or hasn't come back. And there's Indians in the valley that are trying to get rid of the settlers, and Hondo has to make the big stand and save them. And so he's there. I mean, it is the perfect drifter thing, like Shane. He just shows up, and then he helps them, and then he moves on. It's like there's no romance, buddy. He's there. He saves her and the boy, and then he moves on.
So I don't want to mess you up, but going down to the Searchers, what is it like in comparison to the Searchers?
It is fluff compared to the Searchers.
Oh, is it?
John Ford directed the Searchers, and the Searchers is like a classic it's filmed in Monument Valley. It's got the big giant, mesas and stuff like that in it. The Searchers also has a full cast, but in that film, John Wayne's niece is kidnapped by Indians, and he is searching for her. That's the Searchers part to get her back, and it takes years before he finds her. So it takes a long time.
Okay.
And his son, it's also one of the first movies that had Patrick Wayne in it. And he plays like a young corporal in the army or something. But it's just, that is kind of the classic Western. A lot of people love that Western and talk about it, but it is a classic John Ford film. And but Hondo's kind of the popcorn candy version of that. But,
okay.
But it's a smaller cast. You got 3 people really. You got the woman, their son, and Hondo. And so it's that against the Indians. Right. And you kind of have that. There is like an Indian chief that they kind of squabble with in Hondo, but other than that, I mean, there's not really any notable characters. It's just hordes and hordes of Indians coming to kill them, and the 3 of them hold up, to get past it. So, but that's the difference in those. And I've got some other John Waynes on here. The Great Silence is one that you may or may not have heard of. It stars Klaus Kinski, and it is a spaghetti western. And when the spaghetti western started with Fistful of Dollars, and that kind of took it off. That's where all that come from.
Right.
And when that got famous, then all the Italian studios started making westerns, and then they would all try to have something different, a different trick. And the trick in The Silence is it all takes place in the snow. It's all deep winter and there's snow, and the main character cannot speak at all. That's why he's the Great Silence. And but the bad guy, Klaus Kinski, can speak, and he chases him all through the whole thing, and he's just relentless. He's horrible, and a lot of torturing and beating and in the snow, and it's just really sadistic. And then there was kind of a weird alternate ending that's almost like a superhero movie that they took out, but you can sometimes see it. Sometimes it's edited in, sometimes it's not. But it's definitely worth your time, but it's a good movie. From Noon Till 3, which I know you've absolutely never heard of this movie, and I can guarantee it. Charles Bronson stars.
Everybody thinks of Charles Bronson when they think of westerns.
Well, they do think of Charles Bronson, and he played in a lot of great westerns, but this was one when I was growing up, and it's kind of a western romance. And when I was growing up and Charles Bronson was in movies, his leading lady was always Jill Ireland. And that's because in real life, she was his leading lady. That was his wife. And so when they produced a movie together, they would find a movie that had a part for him and a part for her. Oh. And so she was always in them, and usually she played the lead female. And in this movie, she is a woman, a widowed woman who has a house, and he comes in as a bank robber and just happens to stay or come into her house, and then he finds out that these other bank robbers are trying to kill her, and so they have this romance from Noon Till 3, that he spends the day with her, and they kind of have a whirlwind romance. And it's a very sweet movie, and it's just really good. It's really
fast affair.
It's a it's a fast affair, but they're also having to fight the bad guys, and it's something you don't really expect from a western, and it's really good. Really, it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
The next one is Joseph Cotten stars in The Hellbenders, which is a movie that Quentin Tarantino has threatened to remake several times. And what happens in The Hellbenders is that a group of Confederate soldiers, after the war has ended, and they all decide, led by Joseph Cotten, who's kind of a Hollywood big guy, and they decide to rob a gold shipment that they know that the Union Army is taking. And it is all about them stealing that gold and everything. And it's really good. It's a really tight movie and it's yet another spaghetti western. But just happened to have Joseph Cotten in it. He went to Europe and made a lot of movies at that time, and but Quentin Tarantino keeps threatening to make it, and he hasn't made it yet. So he made Django instead, I guess. I have Fistful of Dollars down here, so we talked about Sergio Leone and the Dollars trilogy, the Man with No Name trilogy. Another weird one. And you're going to laugh at this cast, because you may or may not have heard of this.
The Frisco Kid?
The Frisco Kid. Have you ever heard of The Frisco Kid? Came out in 1979.
When he rode into your life as the Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles,
1, 2,
you knew you were in good hands.
3.
You may have been slightly worried when you saw him as a brain specialist from Transylvania in Young Frankenstein.
Do you hear me? Give my creation life!
But you were reassured by his constant control of the situation in Silver Streak. Now he's back in the saddle again.
You robbed the bank!
As the Frisco Kid.
What do you mean we?
I'm a bank robber. You are a rabbi.
I'm not a rabbi. Oh, no!
So get ready for the adventures of the greatest cowboy who ever rode into the Wild West. From Poland. Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford in The Frisco Kid.
And the lead is Gene Wilder.
Okay.
He is the Frisco Kid.
Yep.
He is a rabbi who is traveling from the east to the west, and along the way he gets kind of named with the moniker the Frisco Kid. But he refuses to travel on the Sabbath. He's a rabbi. He goes through all the things of a Jewish rabbi. But his co-star and one of the great pairings between the two of them is Harrison Ford. So it's him and a young Harrison Ford, just off of, this is before Indiana Jones. So this is like,
wow.
Yeah, so it's a young Harrison Ford. And I remember them riding through the snow. It was one of those movies that, like, when we got HBO in this town, it played constantly.
You mean Hell's box office?
No, home box office. But anyway, it played constantly, and everybody around here, or the kids I went to school with, knew that movie just about line for line because it was so funny. It was funny, but it's serious. It's serious in some ways. It's lighthearted.
Right.
But he's going to meet his wife. His wife's going to be in San Francisco or whatever, and so Harrison Ford helps the rabbi get to his new wife in the new world.
Sweet.
So it's a good movie. Dances with Wolves was a surprise to me. I think it was a surprise to a lot of people in 1990 when it came out.
Look at this baseball guy out in the West.
Well, not only that, you had Kevin Costner, and he directed it. And so it was like his first time directing anything. And it was this huge 3-hour movie. I remember people talking about this 3 hours. I went and saw it at the center over here and in 1990, and it was I was the only person there. I went there like on a Wednesday night, and it was me. I watched it. I had a solo screening of Dances with Wolves, and but it started at 7, and they could only show one show a night, so it was so long. But great film. I know you've probably seen it a million times by now. It was basically remade into Avatar.
Yeah,
Avatar is the same movie.
James Cameron's not
James
the
Cameron.
animal.
James Cameron just remade it, and it's Avatar. But it's a Union soldier after the war goes to an outpost. He wants to be on the frontier on the very edge of the world, and he goes and he's there, but he finds out he's the only one there, and then he starts interacting with the natives, and then he starts to see their plight and how they go, and he falls in love with a white woman who's been captured by them, and then
he just kind of like goes from having a full uniform to like taking his clothes off relatively as the movie ends.
By the end of it, he's got feathers in his hair.
Yeah,
I think,
exactly.
But he just gets ingrained with the people and the love of the land and the love of being out there in the West, and he had come from the East, from the war, and he's like, I've seen civilization and how bad it is, and now this is perfection, and so he changes his ways. But that's a great film and epic. The next film up I just recently watched was called The Train Robbers with John Wayne and Anne Margaret.
Okay.
And it's not like the best. It's some people have called it almost a movie because it's very short, but it's almost like a TV episode kind of thing.
I like that though. I like it when it doesn't drone on and on and on and hammer the point home.
Yeah. So it's pretty close to the plot for. The one we were talking about earlier, the one you had the remake.
True Grit?
Yeah, it's pretty close to True Grit because what happens is Anne Margaret is a young, beautiful woman, and she's lovely. She's a lovely lady. And she's a lovely lady in this film.
You're
and
wrong.
so anyway, she has a husband who has died, who's been killed, and he had robbed a train. Now, he had robbed the train, and that line of the train had ended, and so it's the train full of gold is stuck out in the middle of the desert. And so she hires John Wayne and his friends to help her go get that gold so that her and her son can live off of it.
Oh, okay.
And the whole time that they're going, there's people from the train company. They're trying to stop them and like sharpshooting them and following them and trying to keep them from getting this gold. And it has this great set piece where there's the train out in the middle of the desert, buried in sand, and they're hunkered down having to be shootout at the train. So
how does word get out that there's this gold in the middle of the desert?
Because the guy had the funeral and there was 6 other guys helped him rob the train. So not only did the train company find out, but the 6 other guys are trying to get the gold as well. So because whoever gets the gold, it's theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no claims on it. But it's great. It's a great movie. It's kind of short, and a lot of people complained at the time because they just like ride through. You see a lot of riding through places and stuff, like not a lot of dialogue. Yeah. But anyway, I thought it was a lot of fun, and a recent pickup on Blu-ray for like $3. I think it was cheap. Sabata, which you may or may not have heard of, is Lee Van Cleef after The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. Okay. Basically the same outfit, basically the same guy, but he's the hero, and his name's Sabata, and he goes through the same sort of thing.
Hey, amigo!
That never misses. A pistol that shoots 2 ways. And a look that means you're dead before you draw. The man and the gun are one, called Zapata.
But there was a trilogy, a Sabata trilogy.
Sounds like a snack.
Yeah, but anyway, he's Sabata, and he's Sabata in 2 films, and then Yul Brynner plays him in 1 of the films. So in the trilogy, it actually changes actors. But in the center one is Yul Brynner, so it's kind of weird.
That is weird.
It is weird.
You don't usually see an actor come back to a role.
He came back to it, or he couldn't have done the second one or something, and they got Yul Brynner to do it yet again in the full black, like in Westworld. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great trilogy. You can usually pick up the DVDs, like all 3 movies, for like $9, but that first one from 1970 is really good. Another one, a weird one, A Man Called Sledge, has James Garner in it. And it's a spaghetti western that is not a spaghetti western.
Come listen here to my story, which must be told, of how men fought and died, but not for glory, only for gold.
That gold.
You're feeling mean, 'cause you know that gold can't be taken.
Oh, yes, it can. Gold was their god. Gold was their guide. But if they lived, but if they lied.
I'm your woman, Sledge. But you want that gold more than you want me.
And my friends for gold, they died. 7 men dreamed of holding fortune in gold. Gold that would make them rich until they grew old. Dreamed of the thrill as they feel the dust spill through their fingertips. And they laughed at the curse that follows other men's gold.
You try to take that gold, you're committing suicide.
Now, we're going in there. And we're coming out with that gold. Or we ain't ever coming out.
7 men gambled on the turn of a card, gambling their gold away and losing came on. Only one man lived to tell the tale of the curse that follows other men's gold.
You hit one sound and you'll be all over the ceiling.
Remember, man, you are dust, and the dust to return. If you sell out your soul, then in hell you will burn. And take care, my friend. You must beware of the curse that follows other men's gold. Remember, man, you are dust, and the dust to return. If you sell out your soul, then in hell you will burn. Think of what you've been told about worshiping gold. And take care, my friend. You must beware of the curse that follows other men's gold.
It has him and Dennis Weaver, and they as gold robbers. They're going to rob this gold that's in a prison. The gold is actually locked in a prison. So the way they got to get to the gold is to go to jail. So they have to get to jail, and then their gang has to bust them out of jail and then get the gold. And it actually was done by a whole American team, but it was done in that kind of vibe. And the people all like the spaghetti westerns, but it's not a spaghetti western. It's a true American movie.
Why do you think Italy was attracted to that kind of movie?
From the documentaries and things I've seen about the time, the thing was that right before this, the big thing in Italy, there was all these little production companies in Italy, and if something was a hit, like Star Wars or something like that, they would just run with it, and they would do like all these different movies. And so they would just make their own take on them. And before this, it was all Hercules movies. It was all sword and sandal movies. And so they're cheap to make because all you got is people in the desert, with a loincloth and horses, and that's all you had. So it's the same sort of thing. It's the spaghetti westerns, and a lot of the spaghetti westerns, a lot of people don't realize, but they were filmed in Spain. So even though there were Italian companies, they all went to Spain to film them.
Oh, okay.
So the mountains and stuff that you see, that you feel like is the American Southwest, is actually in Spain. So
I see.
So they're not in Italy. But anyway, it was just a fascination that people got once those movies came out, and it just kind of took over. And it still lasts to this day. People were still fascinated with spaghetti westerns. The next one up for me, and we talked about this the other day when we talked about doing this show, is there one Western that I just enjoy watching? And if I see it on TV, I will pretty much stop and watch it. And that is 1995's The Quick and the Dead.
This is my town! If you live to see the dawn, it's because I allow it. I decide who lives or who dies.
In a town called Redemption, death is a way of life. Some fight for money. Some fight for glory. But one stranger has come here, looking for something else.
I now declare the quick draw competition open. Anybody can challenge anybody.
Sign me up.
Sure must want to die young, miss.
She can play their game.
Want to play poker with me, little lady?
Looks like you're having a pretty good time playing with yourself.
She can beat their odds.
Did you ever kill anyone?
Sure.
I don't think you have.
But there's one thing she can't do.
Why are you really here? You're no gunfighter.
Forget the past.
Pick him up! Put him on a chair!
Some people deserve to die.
TriStar Pictures presents Sharon Stone.
I'm gonna kill you if I have to ride all the way to hell to do it.
Gene Hackman.
There's nothing on this earth that frightens me now. Nothing.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Hey, Muffet!
In a film by Sam Raimi. The Quick and the Dead. In this town, you're either one or the other.
Which was directed by Sam Raimi, the guy that just directed Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness. But Sam Raimi directs. It's got an all-star cast that you cannot buy today. You could not pay for this movie. It has Sharon Stone as the lead. Gene Hackman's the lead villain. The hero is Russell Crowe. And the young sidekick guy is Leonardo DiCaprio. And it's also got Lance Henriksen from the Alien movies that played Bishop in Aliens. So it's got all these great actors in it. It's just a great movie. And if you ever have, it was before Russell Crowe became famous. So it's I think it's his first Hollywood movie. And so he was not even well known at all, and he plays the preacher, and he's like a quick draw guy. But now he's changed his ways, and he's a preacher, and Gene Hackman is basically forcing him to enter his quick draw contest and then fight it out. But it's got a lot of spaghetti western throwbacks in it. It's really good though. It's a really good film, and it's a lot of fun. It's a fun film. It's not too deep. It's not too drama. It's just a lot of fun, and then it's got its revenge plot that you go with, so which most spaghetti westerns are revenge movies. The next movie up is The Magnificent Seven, and when you start talking about westerns, A Fistful of Dollars is a remake of a Japanese film called Yojimbo. I believe it's Yojimbo. And Yojimbo is a samurai movie based on a book by the guy that wrote The Maltese Falcon.
The remake of the remake.
It's a remake of a remake of a remake. And actually the people with Yojimbo sued Fistful of Dollars when it came out, and they won.
Wow.
So they got a cut of the money. But anyway, The Magnificent Seven is the same sort of thing, but it is seven cowboys, and it's based on the movie The Seven Samurai. So it is The Seven Samurai. You have the villagers that are having a hard time. They need some help. They go find seven samurai or seven cowboys and gunfighters to come back and defend them. And it's recently remade with, it originally stars Yul Brynner and some other great folks in it, once again in the black outfit, solid black outfit. And But Robert Vaughn was big in it. I remember him having a great part in Magnificent Seven. But it was recently remade with, what's the guy's name? He's in everything. Guardians of the Galaxy guy.
Oh, Chris
Pratt. It's Chris Pratt's in it, and the new one's not bad. It's not a bad movie, but the original one is well known for its
Magnificent.
the original Magnificent Seven is well known for its theme, and they do use it in the new one, but not as much.
Right.
But the theme, I mean, in that original 1960 Magnificent Seven, they run that soundtrack forever.
Yep.
You hear that song like all the time. But it's a great film. It's a classic. Like I say, it's probably another one of those I own a lot of because it's in every Western set. When you get like a Western set of movies, it's in there. 1972's The Cowboys.
In the summer of '78, Will Anderson lost all his cowhands just at the time he was to start his cattle drive. Miserable.
Did you ever think of hiring boys?
What boys?
School boys.
Oh, sure, and women.
How about my mama in Cedar City? She's only 92.
Well, you ain't got a lot of choices.
Who's first?
I'll go first. My name's Honeycutt. I'm 15. And everybody calls me Slim. I'm next. My name's Homer Williams, Mr. Anderson. And I hope I ain't wrote all the rough off of it.
You all right, boy?
Yes, sir. My name's Clyde Potter. They call me Fats.
Then enjoyed the gut myself.
What are you going to use for hands on this drive of yours, huh? Them little bitty boys down there? Come on, you know better than that, Mr. Anderson. You know what you're going to need? Trundle them boys across the prairie, don't you? A baby carriage.
Oh, whatever I need, I'll get. I don't expect to get to Belle Fourche with one single head of beef. But I'm cornered. So I'm taking you on. This is a double O. This is Belle Fourche. In between is 400 miles of the meanest country in the West. And the only way we're gonna get through is if you take orders. You'll get the best food in the territory, no rest, damn little sleep, and come with grit teeth. Because, gentlemen, that's when school really begins.
You know, in the late war between the states, I served under an officer just like you.
Is that right?
As a matter of fact, I shot that military gentleman in the buttocks, just outside Vicksburg.
Point your ears now, son. Because you ain't running back to Mr. Will Anderson with them eyes rolling back in your head, telling him that there's these real bad men that been following us day and night. You're not gonna say that. Because I'm gonna come to you some night when it's real dark. I'm gonna come to you on tiptoe. So you ain't never gonna be able to hear me.
And if you haven't ever seen it, you need to see it. It's a good movie. John Wayne's got to move a herd of cattle. He doesn't have anybody to help him, so he gets a lot of orphan boys to help him.
Oh, dang.
From the town. And they are boys.
Yeah.
And by the time they get there, they're men. Because they go through a lot of hardship to get there. And the big baddie in the whole thing is Bruce Dern. And he is just ruthless and horrible in the thing. And he's trying to stop them at every turn or trying to steal the cattle. And it is just horrible, horrible stuff he does in that movie. And people hated Mr. Dern for years after this movie because he's so mean in it. Jeremiah Johnson, if you haven't seen it, is a real life guy. He was like, Wyatt Earp or somebody like that. He was a real person. And he had moved out west, and it's a film with Robert Redford that Robert Redford produced and directed. I don't think he directed it, but he produced it. And it was filmed in 1972, and it's about him going out and settling and being a trapper. And like the Indians come and kill his wife and all this stuff, and he kills every Indian he can get, and he cuts out their hearts and eats them.
Oh, man.
So he is out for revenge.
Get him.
But he was a real life guy, and he really did this. He went and found the Sioux or whoever that had attacked him and did that. But it's a great film if you have a chance to see that one. Django, the original Django, we were talking about that, is a big influence on any Quentin Tarantino film that you've ever seen, including Reservoir Dogs. There's all of them. It has all of Quentin Tarantino's films have something from the original Django in it.
A century ago on the low hills along the border between the southern states and turbulent Mexico, a mystery man appeared. A man with a sad, impenetrable face.
Django, have you never loved again? Love will live on, life must go on, for you cannot spend your life
was that man? What was his secret?
It's not important. And if I bothered you, will you accept my apology?
He was pitiless in revenge, quick to decide and a master of every weapon. A man everybody would like to have seen dead.
Yeah, his name is Django.
Django, the title of a film you'll never forget. Django.
How many men you got left? You tongue-tied? Or don't want to tell me?
Too bad, Maria. Django, an audacious man of action, capable of a tender, hopeless love which could only last a day, but a day which was worth all eternity.
I'm glad I made you feel like a real woman. Very glad. I mean
Django, a new, ruthless, violent film. Featuring a great new star, Franco Nero. And a great supporting cast.
And then, of course, he made Django Unchained, which is basically a different version of the same film.
Right.
But it's really intense. It starts off with a cowboy. We were talking about spaghetti westerns and the fact that they had to do something different in every one. Like one of them had snow, one of them had dirt. In this one, they had mud.
Okay.
And the town has been flooded, and everything has mud. So they're walking through miles and miles and miles of mud all the time. But there's this one cowboy that comes to town, kind of a stranger, a guy named Django, and he's dragging with him a coffin with chains.
Yeah.
And he's dragging this coffin, and everybody's like, "What's the deal with the coffin?"
It's for you.
And it's the coffin. Well, there's some of them that were called a coffin for Django, and some of them were called that. But anyway, he's dragging this coffin, and you never know what's in the coffin until he needs it. And then you need to see the film. It's apparently got a brand new HDR transfer, 4K transfer, and it's beautiful. They say it's beautiful to watch it.
Nice.
But it is a true spaghetti western, and you're going to have a great time watching it. We're getting down to the wire, people. I know you're probably tired of hearing me talk. The Searchers we talked about, so we kind of covered that. Another film I saw relentlessly in my youth. Relentlessly, like it was almost on every weekend, and it is 1970s Little Big Man.
111 years ago, when I was 10 years old.
Between 1858 and 1878, Jack Crabb was an Indian warrior, a preacher's ward, a gunfighter, a drunkard, a hermit, and he tried to kill General Custer.
Take him away and hang him.
And you can believe as much of that as you want. Dustin Hoffman plays Jack Crabb.
Throw up 3.
And he plays him for real. After real, after real, after real. In Little Big Man.
Dustin Hoffman, real 2.
These were human beings, my son. And now they're dead. Rubbed out by those ugly, unnatural creatures.
Why would they kill women and children?
Because they are strange. They do not seem to know where the center of the earth is. We must have a war on these cowards and teach them a lesson.
Dustin Hoffman, real 5.
You murdered!
got to cut your throat to get it through your head. I'm a white man.
White? Sure I'm white.
Didn't you hear me say, God bless George Washington? God bless my mother. I mean, now what kind of Indian would say a fool thing like that?
Dustin Hoffman and Martin Balsam, real 7.
You're improving, Jack. You just can't seem to get rid of that streak of honesty in you. The one that ruined you was that damned Indian, old Titi.
You mean old Larchkin?
He gave you a vision of moral order in the universe, and there isn't any.
Dustin Hoffman and Faye Dunaway as Mrs. Pendrake, real 4.
You do realize, don't you, dear Jack, that the Reverend Pendrake is not altogether wrong.
What, man?
Well, Jesus is your Savior. You do realize that, don't you, dear Jack?
Oh, Lord. Yes, Miss Pendrake.
Are you thinking of Jesus, Jack?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you mustn't fib to me, you know.
Oh, no, I love Jesus and Moses and all of them.
Dustin Hoffman and Wild Bill Hickok, real 9. Dustin Hoffman and General Custer, real 13.
Take my advice. Go west.
My wife, she's awful scared of Indians.
My dear woman, you have nothing to fear from the Indians. I give you my personal guarantee.
For Christian America, let your arrows fly, savages! I am on board!
Arthur Penn, who gave you The Miracle Worker, Bonnie and Clyde, and Alice's Restaurant, has created 15 reels of motion picture entertainment called Little Big Man.
Oh!
Oh, you devil!
Oh! Oh! Onward! To Little Bighorn!
Welcome to your new home.
His Little Big Man going through history in the West, and it's like
Dustin Hoffman.
Yes, Dustin Hoffman stars, and a lot of people in it. A lot of people in it because he encounters like Custer. He encounters all these people, real life people in the West, but it's basically like a Western version of Forrest Gump. Like his entire life, he has stumbled into these people's lives that things are happening. Like Custer's Last Stand, he stumbles through, and but it was known for because he's 120 years old at the beginning of the movie, and he's telling you his life story. And the makeup artist was Dick Smith, and Dick Smith was known for this. He got an Academy Award for this makeup, for making Dustin Hoffman look 120 years old. And it was so good that they used it as old man makeup, the exact same molds, exact same face mask and everything they used in the Night of Dark Shadows movie. When the vampire turns old, he has the exact same face as Dustin Hoffman has as a 120-year-old man. But it is a classic movie. It's another epic. It's another 3-hour movie.
Right.
And he travels through history, and you get to see the Old West through Little Big Man's eyes through the whole thing. Another one, I got 2 left. One is called Breakheart Pass, which I'm sure you've never heard of. It was a novel and had been made into a movie. It was a best-selling novel at the time.
To begin with, trust no one.
Don't.
And believe half
Outside
of what you see. Because nothing is as it appears. and nobody is who they seem to be.
He needs what?
Now, from the master of action, suspense, and surprises, Charles Bronson in Alistair McLean's Breakheart Pass. All that lies between Fort Humboldt and the nearest town is 400 miles of frozen desolation, connected by a thin lifeline of steel. And all that lies between the men of Fort Humboldt and death are the people on this train. But are the people on this train on a mission of mercy or murder?
Nobody heard anything, nobody saw anything. Nobody knows anything.
Deacon is right. Dr. Molyneux was murdered.
Looks like somebody knocked him out, stuck a thin surgical probe up under his ribs.
I can't find the Reverend. Telegraph line to Myrtle no longer works. Someone is trying to stop this train.
Oh my God!
Hey, we're going backwards.
We're gonna all be on this train for a while. We just might find out what happened before we have to get off.
There's a conspiracy on board this train that goes beyond murder. But who is part of it? And who is expendable? The answer waits at Alistair McLean's Breakheart Pass. Trust no one, and believe half of what you see. Because nothing is as it appears, and nobody is who they seem to be.
He told us what he's not, but not what he is.
And but it's about a train of gold, and it's going through, it's traveling. They're worried about train robbers, but one of the passengers happens to be Charles Bronson, and Charles Bronson is the one protecting the gold. So he has a whole bunch of Union Army guys helping him, but he's the guy. And it had a great theme by Jerry Goldsmith, which is, you think of Western themes, and it's a really good Western theme, and they use it a lot like Magnificent Seven. But it wasn't that big a movie at the time. It didn't do that well, but the book was a best-selling book, had Charles Bronson in the movie, but it's a great little movie, and it's a lot of fun. And, when you got people fighting on a train, on a moving train, constantly, that was the thing. It was all like Murder on the Orient Express. They're all stuck on the train, so they can't really do anything. They're walking up and down the train. They're going through the cars. They're uncoupling cars. They're shooting each other. People hanging off. They go to Breakheart Pass, which is what they got to go past, which is this giant train trellis in this big valley. And, the poster was Charles Bronson hanging off the side of the train, getting ready to fall into the valley, so it was a big thrill kind of a thing. But it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. But it's one of those that you're not going to know unless you were around in 1976. It wasn't so great that it took over the world, but it was a great movie. Now, my final one you've probably heard of, and especially a lot of 80s kids will know, and that's Young Guns with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen and God and everybody else.
Yeah.
Reasons why the West was wild.
No one's fool enough to go in after Murphy's people.
Emilio Estevez.
I'm in.
Deputize them. Kiefer Sutherland.
You must like trouble.
Trouble? You think I look like trouble? I'm a poet. Between those are just boys. Ain't one of them over 21. Murphy's men will shred them in half within a day.
Casey Shimashko.
I'm a pugilist. Court adjourned.
Dermot Mulroney.
He ain't all there, is he?
Lou Diamond Phillips. My vision told me we're headed for blood. Charlie Sheen.
We got warrants for the law!
You were supposed to serve 11 warrants and expose the ring. Instead, you went out and you went on the warpath. The governor's revoked your deputization powers. You're now wanted by the legitimate law as well as those outside the law. You're being hunted by troops.
I like these odds.
Young Guns.
So, but anyway, Terrence Stamp plays the mentor to Billy the Kid, and when he's killed, then they go on a rampage, and they go and do whatever they want to do, and they are Young Guns. So
Nice.
you have all the big 80s stars came together and did this little Western with a theme by Bon Jovi, because you had Blaze of Glory was a big single.
It's the 80s, right?
It's the 80s. You had Bon Jovi, you had Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen, Lou Diamond Phillips. I'm trying to think of all. I mean, it's just like Kiefer Sutherland. It's just all these the young guns,
Right.
and it's a lot of fun. They did make a sequel, but it wasn't as good, but it's a classic Western now.
Sweet.
So, but just a lot of fun. But that's the crazy ones. There's tons I still want to see.
So plenty to watch.
Plenty to watch. Plenty to talk about. But those are the ones that just pop out to me. These are the ones that just popped out to me personally, and I feel like I've talked way more than you probably wanted to hear. But just a lot of Westerns that I've seen over the years here in town, here in Caldwell County most of the time.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Red Dead Redemption. I mean, if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption and you play video games, just play it. It's such a character-driven Western first-person
I didn't
game.
like the shooting mechanics, but I hate first-person shooters.
Well, once you get over that, if you just focus on the story, maybe just watch it on YouTube. Watch the cinematics.
Watch the story on the YouTube.
Watch the cinematics on YouTube, because as a character-driven story, it's not even exclusive to a video game. It's really good.
And that was like the zombie version.
Yes, the Undead Nightmare. Yeah, that's for the first one.
Yeah.
I rode in a gang. They left me to die after I'd been shot. I left the gang after the gang left me. I tried to go straight. I did. Then I got me more trouble.
You can't change, John.
You don't do deals with outlaws, boy.
Yeah, you do.
You are the bounty hunter, huh? Your country loves to make trouble in mine. Perhaps you come to hunt me, huh?
You always did have a high opinion of yourself, John.
This is America, where a lying, cheating degenerate can prosper.
What will you do now, Mr. Marston?
Now I'm gonna take my time and go after him the less kind way.
It's gonna be a bloody job.
I don't know any other kind.
I was right all along. The savage heart cannot be conventionally civilized. Maybe you live in a different America than we.
I'm gonna cut you up, piece by piece.
Civilization is a truly beautiful thing, Mr. Marston.
Well, old man, looks like things is about to get settled once and for all.
So it seems.
And then there's like Call of Juarez was like a big video game I remember, and there was one kind of gunslinger game for the PSP that I had, and it was so hard to do the gunslinging thing. It was way too hard. Way too hard. They make it too complicated.
But, yeah.
So
There's our Western show.
There's your Western show. Take the time. Pop you some popcorn.
Take a lot of time. I think you have about 1,000 hours.
I have 1,000 hours of movies. But just take the time and sit and watch a Western with someone you love. That's all we say.
Yes. Or go to the library. They got tons of Westerns.
I got tons of Westerns.
In Caldwell County Public Library. Lord.
If there's any of them that you're looking for, call Keegan at 758.
Heck yeah.
But anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for taking time to spend with us and talk Westerns today. I'm Eric Stafford.
This is Keegan Matheson.
And we're saying adios, amigo.
Adios.